The first time my stepmother told a security guard I was not family, my father was lying in a casket 20 feet behind her. I stood outside the glass doors of St. Matthew's Chapel, holding a black coat over one arm, and my father's old watch inside my purse. The service had not started yet. People were still arriving. Former co-workers, neighbors, church members, relatives who had not called him in years. My stepmother, Caroline, stood just inside the entrance wearing black silk, pearls, and the expression she had practiced for photographs. Then she looked directly at the guard and said, "She is not on the family list." The guard turned toward me. I looked through the doors. I could see the white flowers around Dad's casket. I could see the framed photograph from his retirement dinner. I could see my half-brother Evan sitting near the front with his head lowered. And I could see a funeral program on the table, the program I had helped write. "My name is Rachel Bennett," I said. "David Bennett was my father." Caroline opened the door only far enough to step outside, then closed it behind her. That was deliberate. She did not want me seeing the room. "Rachel," she said quietly, "today needs to remain peaceful. I came to sit down and say goodbye. You were told the family seating had changed." I was told my speech was removed. For the same reason. What reason? She gave me a sad smile. "You make everything about conflict. There are people who become most dangerous when they speak softly." Caroline never shouted if there were witnesses. She used calm as evidence that the other person was unstable. I looked at the guard. He looked uncomfortable. "Ma'am," he said to me, "do you have an invitation?" An invitation. To my father's funeral. I pulled up the original service email on my phone. My name appeared below the section titled Family Remarks. Rachel Bennett, daughter. Caroline barely glanced at it. That was an early draft. A car door closed behind me. My Aunt Judith, Dad's older sister, came up the chapel steps. She looked from me to Caroline. "What is going on?" Caroline answered without turning. "Rachel is causing a scene." I almost laughed. I had not raised my voice. I had not touched the doors. I was standing on the steps while my stepmother explained why I should miss my own father's funeral. Aunt Judith looked at the guard. "She is David's eldest child." The guard spoke into his radio. Caroline folded her hands. "This is not about biology. It is about what David wanted." My body became still. Dad wanted me excluded? He wanted dignity. That was not my question. Caroline's eyes tightened. For 1 second, the polished widow disappeared. Then she recovered. "Your father spent years trying to repair the distance you created." The accusation was old. I had heard versions of it since I was 22. I had rejected Dad's company, rejected his legacy, rejected the family. What I had actually rejected was a job he chose for me. But in Caroline's story, saying no to Bennett Engineering meant saying no to my father. Dad and I had been complicated, not estranged. Complicated. We argued. We missed calls. We loved each other through articles, awkward lunches, and practical favors. He sent me links to housing policy reports with one-line messages. "Thought of you." I visited his hospital room when Caroline said he was sleeping. I met him at his office when he wanted advice but did not want the board to know the advice came from his daughter, who worked in nonprofit housing. There were things between us Caroline never understood. That was why she was afraid of me. Not because I was not family. Because I knew parts of my father she did not control. The guard received an answer through his radio. He looked at Caroline. "The funeral director says the family contact controls entry." Caroline nodded once. Then she looked at me. "You need to leave." People were watching now. My cousin Mark had stopped near the curb. 2 of Dad's former engineers stood beside the chapel sign. Someone behind me lifted a phone. Humiliation changes when witnesses arrive. It can crush you, or it can become clarity. I thought about forcing my way inside. I thought about shouting that Dad had asked for me the night he died, and Caroline had told the nurse I was out of state. I thought about reading his private messages aloud on the chapel steps. Then I remembered the last thing he had told me. Do not fight her in the room she prepared. Wait for the room I prepared. At the time, I thought pain medication had made him confused. Now I did not. I stepped back. Caroline looked relieved too quickly. You are really leaving? Aunt Judith asked. For now. Rachel. Stay, I said. Sit where Dad expected you. She studied my face, then nodded. Caroline opened the door for her. Before stepping inside, Aunt Judith turned toward the guard. You should remember whose order you followed. The doors closed. The organ began 3 minutes later. I sat in my car without starting the engine. For 9 minutes, I cried. Not elegant tears. Not quiet movie tears. I cried like the 12-year-old girl who used to wait at the window for Dad's car after the divorce. Then my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost ignored it. Something made me answer. Ms. Bennett? Yes. My name is Thomas Reed. I represented your father. I knew the name. Thomas had been Dad's attorney for more than 20 years. I had met him twice. He was tall, exact, and famous in our family for billing by the sentence. I know who you are. I need you to come to the Bennett engineering office. Now? Yes. My father's funeral is happening. I know. Then why now? There was a pause. Because your father instructed me to contact you if you were prevented from attending. I looked back at the chapel doors. What did he know? Enough. My hand tightened around the phone. What is at the office? Documents. What kind? Ownership, estate, and access. I heard paper moving on his end. Then he said, bring identification. Why? Because I am supposed to hand you the keys. I looked at the chapel where Caroline had just told a security guard I was not family. What keys? Thomas answered calmly. All of them. That was the moment everything changed. But the keys were not only for my father's house. They were for Bennett Engineering, the downtown office building, the lake property, a private storage unit, and a safe deposit box Caroline did not know existed. My stepmother had spent the morning locking me out of one room. My father had spent his final months preparing to unlock every room she had tried to control. To understand why, you need to understand my father. David Bennett was disciplined, brilliant, and deeply uncomfortable with emotion. He could explain a bridge load calculation for 40 minutes and still not know how to say, I miss you. When my parents divorced, he tried to solve the damage with schedules. Every other weekend. Half of holidays. 2 weeks each summer. He followed the calendar perfectly and misunderstood almost everything else. My mother cried. I became angry. Dad became more organized. That was his pattern. When emotion became complex, he created a system. Caroline fit him because she loved systems too. At first, that helped. She remembered birthdays, planned dinners, sent family photographs. Dad became easier to reach because Caroline created structure around him. Then structure became ownership. She did not simply arrange his life. She edited it. If I called while Dad was tired, she answered and said he was unavailable. If I disagreed about a holiday, she told relatives I had canceled. If Dad forgot to return a message, she explained that he was disappointed in my tone. She became the translator between us. Translations change meaning when the translator has a goal. After college, I joined a nonprofit housing organization instead of Bennett Engineering. Dad was disappointed. Not because he hated my work, because the company had always been part of his plan for me. You understand projects, he said. You understand numbers. Why work for people who spend all year begging for grants? Because housing matters. Engineering matters. I did not say it doesn't. Caroline later told the family I had rejected Dad's legacy. That phrase followed me for years. At Christmas. At retirement dinners. At Evan's graduation. When Dad's health failed, she used the old wound as proof that I had chosen distance. But Dad and I had continued in secret ways. 3 years before his death, Bennett Engineering acquired a struggling urban planning firm. The acquisition gave the company access to public housing contracts. Dad called me. Your world and mine may finally have to speak. We began meeting once a month, first for coffee, then project reviews, then real collaboration. I helped the company understand resident concerns, nonprofit financing, and community boards. Dad talked about bringing me into the company. I refused a job. He offered a consulting agreement. I accepted. Caroline knew I occasionally advised. She did not know the company paid my nonprofit for community research. She did not know I attended strategy meetings. She did not know Dad had begun changing ownership, not to me directly, to a trust with conditions. The first clue arrived after Dad's second hospitalization. I visited on a Tuesday afternoon. Caroline had gone home to shower. Dad was awake, weak, annoyed by every machine. He asked me to close the door. Then he said, "She is planning the funeral." I tried to smile. "You are not dead. She likes advance notice." "That sounds like her." He did not smile. "She removed your name from the hospital contact list." I stared at him. "What?" "She said you create stress." "Do I?" "Yes." Despite everything, I laughed. He continued. "She also asked Thomas about changing the voting trust. Can she?" "No." "Why, tell me?" "Because I let her believe too much belonged to her." The sentence made no sense then. What belongs to her? My house, my life, my decisions. Dad. I am not confused. I sat closer. "What did Thomas say?" "He said changes require capacity and independent review." "Do you want changes?" "I already made them." He looked toward the door, then lowered his voice. "If she keeps you from the funeral, go to the office." "Why would she do that?" "Because she thinks grief is possession." That was the first time Dad described Caroline with complete clarity. He reached beneath his blanket and handed me his old watch. The leather was cracked, the face scratched. He had worn it through the first 20 years of the company. "Keep this. I don't want things." "I know." "Then why?" "Because you understand time better than I did." I cried then. He looked away. Emotional conversations still embarrassed him, even near the end. 3 weeks later, he died. Caroline called me 4 hours after the hospital confirmed it. Not immediately. 4 hours. She said he had passed peacefully. She said there would be arrangements. She said I should wait for instructions. I asked whether he had requested me. She said no. The nurse later told Aunt Judith that Dad asked for Rachel twice. Caroline said I was traveling and unreachable. I was 30 minutes away. That lie ended whatever trust remained. Still, I planned to attend quietly. I did not want a public war beside his casket. Caroline knew that. She used it. What she did not know was that Dad had planned for her to use it. And Thomas Reed was waiting at the office with the proof. Bennett Engineering occupied a 6-story brick building downtown. Dad had bought it 28 years earlier when the company was small enough to fit on 1 floor. Over time, he renovated the upper levels, rented 2 floors to other firms, and placed the company headquarters on the 4th and 5th. I had been there hundreds of times. That morning, the building looked unfamiliar. The lobby was empty. A security officer waited beside the front desk. When I gave my name, he stood. "Ms. Bennett, Mr. Reed is upstairs." No one asked whether I belonged. The elevator opened onto the 5th floor. Thomas stood outside Dad's conference room, wearing a dark suit and holding a leather document case. Beside him was Maria Chen, Bennett Engineering's chief financial officer. Maria had worked with Dad for 16 years. She hugged me without speaking. That frightened me more than Thomas's call. "What is happening?" I asked. Thomas opened the conference room door. Your father left instructions for a conditional estate briefing. Conditional on me being locked out? Prevented from participating in the memorial service, removed from the hospital contact file, or denied access to company or personal property. Maria looked toward the table. David was specific. On the conference table were 6 folders. Each had a label: estate, company trust, property, medical directives, correspondence, contingency. Beside them sat a ring of keys. Not decorative keys, real ones, heavy brass, electronic fobs, a small silver safe deposit key. I remained standing. Did Caroline know about this? Thomas answered. She knew your father completed estate planning. She did not know the contingency details. Why? Because the contingency was designed around her behavior. The sentence sounded harsh. I looked at Maria. She nodded. Your father became concerned during his final year. Concerned about what? Maria opened the company trust folder. Caroline believed she would control Bennett Engineering through Evan after David's death. Wouldn't Evan inherit? Partly. I sat down. Thomas placed a document before me. The David Bennett Business Continuity Trust. Dad had created it 5 years earlier. The trust held 62% of Bennett Engineering. Dad personally retained another 12%. Senior executives and employees held the remainder. Under the original plan, Dad's trust shares would be divided after his death. 30% to Evan, 20% to me, 12% to a charitable engineering foundation. But Dad had amended the trust 9 months earlier. The new structure did not divide shares immediately. It transferred voting control to a stewardship board. Maria had 1 seat. Thomas had 1. A retired engineer named Paul Mercer had 1. And I had 2. I stared at the page. I have voting control? Not alone, Thomas said, but you are chair of the stewardship board. I never agreed. You signed an advisory acceptance. I remembered a packet Dad sent me after one of our project meetings. It described community governance and company ethics. I thought I was accepting a future advisory role. I had read every page, but the trust name appeared only in an attached schedule Dad told me was administrative. You let me sign without understanding? Thomas remained calm. Your father believed you understood more than you admitted. That is not consent. No, which is why your role is revocable. You can decline today. Maria leaned forward. If you decline, voting control shifts to Paul and me jointly. What about Evan? He receives economic benefits, Thomas said. He does not receive immediate voting authority. Why? Maria answered. Because Caroline had been pressuring him to remove managers and sell divisions. I stared. Evan is 22. Yes. He has never worked here. Yes. Then why did she think he should control it? Neither answered. They did not need to. Because he was her son. Because she believed marriage had converted Dad's life into her branch of the family. I opened the estate folder. Dad's personal assets were substantial. The main residence, the lake house, investment accounts, the downtown building, land outside the city, a collection of engineering drawings, antique instruments, and cars. The estate was not divided the way Caroline expected. The main residence belonged to Dad and Caroline jointly with survivorship rights. She would receive it. She also received a life insurance policy, retirement accounts, and a marital trust producing annual income. She was not being left poor. Far from it. But she did not receive Bennett Engineering. She did not receive the downtown building. She did not receive the lake house outright. The downtown building transferred to a property trust benefiting company employees and my father's foundation. The lake house transferred to me. The land outside the city transferred to Evan. Personal investments were divided between us through separate trusts. Why the lake house? I asked. Thomas slid forward a handwritten note. Rachel understands that a place is not improved by making it expensive. She will keep the shoreline open, the old trees standing, and the neighbors welcome. I had spent every childhood summer there. Dad and I repaired the dock together after the divorce. It was the only place where he stopped acting like a company president. Caroline hated it. Weak internet, old plumbing, too many mosquitoes. She wanted to sell it and buy a modern vacation property. Dad always refused. I touched the note. "What keys are these?" Maria pointed. "Lake House, downtown building executive access, company archive, private storage, safe deposit box, and your father's office. Caroline has access to his office." "Not anymore." "What happened?" Maria opened the contingency folder. The first document was a log of access attempts. Caroline had visited the office 2 days after Dad died. She asked IT to transfer his email. She asked Maria for company bank access. She requested the shareholder registry. She brought Evan to Human Resources and tried to have him listed as interim executive successor. Maria refused. Thomas sent a formal notice. Caroline responded by saying the widow had authority over the deceased owner's company. She did not. Then she asked the funeral home to remove my name from the family program. Dad's contingency instructions had been triggered step by step. "What happens now?" I asked. Thomas looked at his watch. "First, we wait until the funeral service ends." "Why?" "Your father did not want estate information interrupting the service." "He planned for me to miss it." "No, he planned for Caroline to make a choice." That distinction hurt. Dad could have prevented the lockout by naming me directly with the funeral home. Instead, he had allowed a test. A final system. I became angry. He used my funeral attendance as evidence. Thomas did not defend him. "Yes. That is cruel." "Yes." Maria looked at me. David thought if he confronted Caroline directly, she would behave until the documents were signed, then challenge them later. He wanted independent evidence. So I was bait. "No," Thomas said. "You were the person he believed would leave rather than create a scene. That is not better." "No." I stood and walked toward the windows. From the 5th floor, I could see the chapel roof 6 blocks away. The service was happening. Someone was probably speaking about Dad's integrity, his careful planning, his devotion to family. Meanwhile, I was inside his office, learning that he had turned my humiliation into a legal trigger. I hated him for 5 minutes. Grief allows impossible combinations. I loved him, missed him, understood him, hated what he did, all at once. "Can I still go back?" I asked. Thomas checked the time. "The service is more than halfway complete. I could stand outside. You can do anything you choose." I looked at the keys. Did he leave a recording? Thomas's expression changed. "Yes." He opened the correspondence folder and handed me a small encrypted drive. "Not here," he said. "Your father instructed you to watch it at the lake house." "Why?" "I do not know." That was the first answer he gave me that sounded fully human. At noon, the chapel service ended. My phone filled with messages. "Aunt Judith, where are you?" "Cousin Mark, Caroline told people you chose not to attend." Dad's former colleague, "I am sorry we missed you." "Evan, please call me." Then Caroline, "Your absence was noticed. I hope you understand the damage you caused." I stared at the message. She had locked the door. Then blamed me for not being inside. Thomas asked whether I wanted him to respond. "No." "What do you want to do?" "Go to the burial." Caroline could control the chapel entrance. The cemetery was public. Maria offered to drive. I refused. I needed 10 minutes alone. When I arrived, the burial had not started. Cars lined the narrow road. People stood around the gravesite beneath gray clouds. I parked at the edge and walked across the wet grass. Heads turned. Caroline saw me first. Her face changed. Not grief. Alarm. Evan moved toward me. Rachel. He hugged me before I could decide whether I wanted it. He was tall like Dad, with Caroline's light eyes and none of her control. Where were you? Outside the chapel. His body stiffened. What? Caroline approached. This is not the place. I looked at her. That phrase is becoming less convincing. Evan turned toward his mother. You said Rachel decided not to come. She refused to respect the arrangements. You locked me out, I said. Aunt Judith stepped beside us. I saw it. People nearby were listening. Caroline lowered her voice. Not beside David's grave. I looked toward the casket. She was right about one thing. Dad deserved one moment not organized around us. I'm not fighting here, I said. I walked to the front. No one stopped me. I stood beside Aunt Judith as the minister spoke. The wind moved through the cemetery trees. When the casket lowered, I placed Dad's old watch against my palm. I did not throw flowers. I did not give a speech. I said goodbye without Caroline's permission. After the burial, people approached me carefully. Some apologized for not knowing. Some avoided me. Dad's former business partner, Paul Mercer, shook my hand. Your father was proud of your work. Caroline heard. Her eyes narrowed. Evan remained beside me. What happened at the office? He asked. I looked at him. Why do you think I went there? Mom said Thomas called you. Caroline had known. Not the documents. The meeting. How? Thomas sent her a notice. Before I could ask more, Caroline reached us. We need a family meeting at the house. Thomas appeared behind her. No, he said. Everyone turned. He carried the leather case. Caroline's face hardened. You do not control my home. No, you do. Then the meeting will be there. The estate briefing will occur at my office tomorrow at 10. I am the surviving spouse. You are one beneficiary. Her expression changed. It was the first time anyone had described her role without using widow as a title of authority. She looked at me. What did he give you? I thought of the keys in my purse. Nothing you need to discuss beside the grave. Her lips tightened. You think you won. I looked at Dad's casket. No one won. Then Thomas handed me an envelope. In front of Caroline. On the outside, in Dad's handwriting, were 4 words. For the first locked door. I opened it. Inside was a single key and a note. Rachel, go to the lake house before anyone else. Do not enter with Caroline. Do not give her this key. The truth she fears is not in my will. It is in the blue room. I read the line twice. The lake house had no blue room. Not when I was a child. But 6 months earlier, Dad had converted the old storage room beside his workshop. Caroline said it was for medical equipment. Apparently, it was for something else. I folded the note. Caroline watched every movement. What does it say? I placed it inside my coat. Tomorrow at 10. Then I left the cemetery. Evan called after me. I stopped. Can I come? I thought about Dad's warning. Do not enter with Caroline. It said nothing about Evan. Yes, I said. But not with your mother. Caroline looked at him. Evan. He looked between us. For the first time in his life, he did not automatically move toward her. I'll drive myself, he said. That small decision opened the next door. The lake house stood 90 minutes outside the city, at the end of a narrow road lined with pine trees. Dad bought it before I was born. The house was cedar, stone, and stubborn maintenance. The roof needed attention every winter. The dock leaned slightly left. One bedroom had a window that never closed completely. Caroline saw problems. Dad saw history. I arrived before sunset. Evan's car pulled in 6 minutes later. He stepped out wearing the same black suit from the funeral, but without the tie. For a moment, he looked 12 years old. Did Dad really leave you the house? He asked. How do you know? Mom said Thomas mentioned a property transfer. She moves quickly. She has been calling everyone. What is she saying? That you manipulated Dad during his illness. I looked at him. Do you believe that? I do not know what to believe. Fair answer. I unlocked the front door. The house smelled like cedar, dust, and the faint coffee Dad brewed too strongly. Nothing had moved since my last visit, except the medical equipment had disappeared. A cup sat upside down beside the sink. Dad's boots remained near the back door. His green jacket hung on the hook. I touched the sleeve. Grief came in waves, but sometimes it arrived as an object exactly where the person left it. Evan stood quietly. I did not know you came here with him. I did. Mom said you had not visited in 2 years. I was here 3 months ago. His face changed. She said Dad came alone. He did not. We walked through the living room. Family photographs covered one wall. Most included all 4 of us. A few showed Dad and me at building sites. One showed Evan graduating high school. Caroline had arranged those photos. Whatever else she had done, she had not removed me from the house. Not yet. The blue room was behind Dad's workshop. The door had been painted dark blue. A new electronic lock sat beneath the handle. The key Thomas gave me opened the first lock. The electronic panel requested a code. I tried Dad's birthday. Wrong. Company founding date. Wrong. Evan watched. What would he use? I looked at the old watch. On the back, beneath years of scratches, Dad had engraved a date. June 18th. Not a birthday. The date of the first affordable housing project we worked on together. I entered 0618. The lock clicked. Inside, the room contained no medical equipment. It contained records, metal filing cabinets, a small desk, 2 video cameras, shelves of boxes, a computer with no internet cable, and a wall covered with plans. Not company plans, family plans. Dad had documented his last 2 years, medical decisions, conversations, estate concerns, emails, notes about Caroline, notes about me, notes about Evan. The room was not an attack file. That made it more painful. It was the work of a man who no longer trusted spoken memory. He had turned his family into a project archive. Evan opened the nearest box. Inside were copies of hospital access forms. My name appeared on the original, then a revised version without it. Caroline's signature approved the change. A note in Dad's handwriting read, "Not requested by me. Restored after discussion. Removed again during next admission." Another folder contained funeral planning emails. Dad's instruction. Rachel may speak if she chooses. Judith may sit with her. No separate household family category. Caroline's revised plan removed my remarks and created a private family seating list. Dad had anticipated it because she had done similar things at company events. Evan read silently. His hands began shaking. She told me Dad did not want conflict. He probably did not. She told me you kept forcing him into meetings. I met him when he asked. Evan found a printed email from Dad. To Rachel. Come Thursday at 3. Do not copy Caroline. She will turn the project review into a family argument. Evan sat in the desk chair. I do not understand why he stayed married to her. I did. The answer was not satisfying. She managed the life he did not want to manage. That is not love. It can be part of love. Then why build this room? Because management became control. On the desk sat a sealed letter addressed to Evan. He looked at me. Should I open it? It has your name? His fingers tore the envelope. He read quietly, then handed it to me. Evan, your mother loves you fiercely, sometimes too fiercely to let you become separate from her. I allowed that because it made the house peaceful. Peace purchased by one person's silence is debt, not peace. You are not responsible for defending her against every consequence. You are not responsible for taking my place at the company. You are not required to choose between your mother and your sister. Anyone demanding that choice is asking for control, not loyalty. Learn the business if you want, walk away if you want, but choose before someone chooses for you. Dad. Evan covered his face. I looked away. The letter Dad left me was beneath the keyboard. Rachel, you were right that systems cannot replace apologies. I am leaving you another system because I waited too long to become better at apologies. I knew Caroline might exclude you. I should have stopped it directly. Instead, I documented it. That was cowardly and practical, which describes too much of my life. The keys are not a prize, they are work. Accept only what you want. The lake house is yours because you preserved what I loved without pretending it was easy. The company trust needs someone who understands that buildings hold people, not only value. You understand that. Evan needs a sister, not a supervisor. Caroline needs security, not control. I have provided the first. Do not give her the second. I am sorry I made your strength convenient. I am sorry I let silence become evidence against you. I am sorry for the funeral door, even if she chooses not to close it. Dad. I sat at the small desk and cried. Evan stood and placed one hand on my shoulder. Neither of us spoke. The apology did not erase the chapel steps. It changed what they meant. Dad had not wanted me excluded. He had expected it. He had also admitted that planning for harm was not the same as preventing it. That honesty was painful and precious. We found the video recording on the computer. Dad appeared on screen wearing a gray sweater. He looked thinner than I remembered. The date was 12 days before his death. He spoke directly to the camera. If Rachel and Evan are watching together, something went better than expected. Evan laughed through tears. Dad continued. If Caroline is present, turn this off. We both looked toward the door. Then at each other. Dad explained the estate. Caroline's financial security. The company trust. The lake house. The land, for Evan. Then he addressed the secret she feared. I discovered last year that Caroline had been using company charitable accounts to support private family expenses. Evan looked at me. I paused the video. What does that mean? I don't know. We opened the folder labeled Foundation Review. Bennett Engineering funded a charitable foundation. Scholarships. Community projects. Employee emergency grants. Caroline served as volunteer chair. Over 4 years, she directed grants to several organizations. Some were legitimate. Others were connected to friends. One organization, New Start Families, had received $380,000. Its public mission was housing support for widowed parents and children. Its director was Caroline's cousin. The records showed part of the money paid for renovations to a house occupied by Caroline's mother. Another payment covered tuition for a relative. A third paid consulting fees to a company owned by Caroline. The foundation's external audit had flagged the transactions. Dad intervened before the issue became public. He required repayment. Caroline returned some money through a property sale. A balance remained. The marital trust deducted that balance from future discretionary payments. Dad had chosen not to prosecute or expose her. But he had removed her from foundation control. She believed Rachel had caused it. I had not even known. The video resumed. Caroline thinks Rachel discovered the foundation transfers because Rachel questioned one housing grant during a project meeting. Rachel did not know. I did. I allowed Caroline to believe Rachel was responsible because I did not want the argument directed at me. I stopped the video again. Anger replaced grief. He had used me as cover. Not intentionally at first. Then, deliberately. Evan stared at the screen. He let Mom blame you. Yes. Why? Because I was already difficult. The role had made me useful again. Dad's video continued. This was wrong. The records are preserved because the trust board may need them if Caroline challenges the estate or company plan. They should not be released publicly unless required. Security does not require humiliation. The final folder contained a settlement agreement. Caroline had signed it 7 months earlier. She acknowledged improper foundation transactions. She agreed to resign. She waived claims to company voting control. She accepted the marital trust terms. Her signature was clear. She knew she would not own Bennett Engineering. She knew the lake house was excluded from the marital estate. She knew Dad had protected her from public consequences. And still, she had locked me out. Not because she thought she owned everything, because she wanted everyone else to think she did. Evan stood. "We need to take this to Thomas." "Yes." "Will Mom go to jail?" "No one has said that." "If the records become public?" "I do not know." He paced. "She did wrong things." "Yes. But she took care of Dad." "Yes. She loves me." "Yes. You hate her." I thought about it. "No." He stopped. "How can you not?" "Because hate would make her simple." He sat again. The room grew dark around us. Then headlights appeared through the window. A car entered the driveway. Evan looked outside. His face went pale. "It's Mom." Dad's note returned to me. "Do not enter with Caroline." We had not. But now she had come. Caroline stepped out wearing her funeral coat. She walked directly toward the house. Evan stood. "What do we do?" "Lock the blue room." "She has a house key." "Not anymore." Thomas had changed access under Dad's instruction after death. I closed the files, removed the drive, and locked the blue room door. Caroline knocked, then tried her key. It did not work. She knocked again. "Rachel." I opened the front door but kept the chain engaged. Her face was pale with anger. "Let me in." "No. This is my husband's house. It transferred to me. Not until probate. It was held in a transfer on death trust." Her expression changed. Thomas had already told her enough to know I was right. "Evan is inside." "Yes." She looked past me. "Evan, come home." He stepped into view. "I'm staying." Her face broke. Not into anger. Fear. "What did she show you?" "Dad showed me. Your father was sick. He made a video." Caroline looked at me. "You had no right to bring him here." "He asked to come." "You are turning my son against me on the day we buried his father." Evan's voice shook. "Mom, did you take foundation money?" She became still. The night sounds seemed louder. Wind in the trees, water against the dock, a distant car on the road. Caroline's eyes moved toward me. "You found the records. Dad preserved them. He promised they were finished." "The settlement is preserved." Her anger returned. "You have no idea what happened." "Then explain it to Evan." She looked at him. "I borrowed money." "From a charity?" "I moved funds between accounts." "For Grandma's house?" She was going to lose it. "For Cousin Leah's tuition?" She was struggling. "For your consulting company?" "I did work." Evan looked sick. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because you were a child." "I am 22. You are still my son." He stepped closer to the door. "That is not an answer." Caroline began crying. "Your father made everything look worse." "No," I said. "He made it quieter." She turned toward me. "You poisoned him against me." "I did not know." "You questioned the grant." "I asked why a housing nonprofit had no public projects." "He came home suspicious after meeting you." "He should have been suspicious." Her face hardened. "I kept him alive." The sentence hit both of us. "I managed every doctor," she continued. "Every medication, every appointment. You visited when it suited you and talked about projects. I was there every day." "That is true," I said. She stopped. She expected denial. "You cared for him," I continued. "You also controlled access." "Because stress was dangerous." "Then why lie when he asked for me?" Her face changed. Evan looked at her. What lie? I told him. The nurse. Dad asking twice. Caroline saying I was out of state. Evan stepped back. Mom? He was confused. Was she out of state? Caroline did not answer. He understood. For the first time, Evan closed a door on her. Not physically, emotionally. I'm staying here tonight, he said. Caroline stared at him. You choose her? Dad's letter had predicted the question. Anyone demanding that choice is asking for control, not loyalty. Evan looked at his mother. I'm choosing not to leave because you ordered me. She flinched, then looked at me. This is what you wanted. No. You have the house, the company, Evan. I do not have Evan. You always wanted my place. I almost laughed. I wanted my father. The sentence ended the argument. Not because she agreed, because she understood it. Caroline stepped back. Tomorrow, she said. Thomas's office. Yes. She walked to her car. Before leaving, she looked at the house one last time, then drove away. Evan and I stayed in the living room until sunrise. We talked about Dad. Not the trust, not Caroline. Dad, his terrible jokes, his habit of measuring furniture before buying it, the way he sang one line of the same song while making coffee, the times he failed us, the times he tried. Grief became shared instead of controlled. That was the first inheritance that mattered. The estate meeting began at 10 the next morning. Thomas's office overlooked the river from the 12th floor of a building Dad had helped design. Caroline arrived with 2 attorneys. Not 1, 2. Evan came alone. Aunt Judith came as a named witness. Maria represented the company trust. Paul Mercer joined by video. I sat beside Thomas with Dad's keys inside my bag. Caroline did not look at me when she entered. She wore navy instead of black. The widow had become a litigant. Thomas began with the estate summary. He explained the house, the insurance, the marital trust, the property transfers, the company continuity trust. Caroline interrupted within 5 minutes. David lacked capacity when he made the final amendments. Thomas opened a folder. Independent medical evaluations were completed on 3 separate dates. He was medicated. Capacity does not require the absence of medication. He was influenced. By whom? Her eyes moved toward me. Rachel, I almost answered. Thomas raised one hand. Evidence? Caroline's attorney placed a stack of emails on the table. Messages between Dad and me. Project notes. Meeting invitations. A text where Dad wrote, "We need to fix the structure before Caroline makes Evan responsible for something he does not want." Caroline looked at Evan. You see? He read the message, then looked at her. I told Dad I did not want the company. The room became quiet. Caroline turned toward him. You were 21. I am 22 now. You do not understand what ownership means. Neither did you when you tried to put my name on an executive form. Her attorney whispered something. Caroline ignored him. I was protecting your future. No, you were planning it. The difference mattered. Thomas returned to the documents. He presented the medical reviews, Dad's signed statements, video verification, independent witnesses, Caroline's own settlement agreement. Her attorney had clearly not seen that last document. He requested a private break. Thomas refused until the estate summary was complete. When he described the lake house transfer, Caroline laughed. A house worth more than $1 million to the daughter who abandoned him. Aunt Judith spoke before I could. Rachel did not abandon David. Caroline turned. You were not inside our marriage. No, but I was inside the hospital when you told a nurse Rachel was in another state. Caroline's face tightened. Her attorney wrote something. Thomas asked Aunt Judith to describe the funeral entrance. She did. The guard, the list, the early program, the closed door. Then Thomas introduced the chapel's security recording and funeral director emails. Dad's contingency required proof that Caroline interfered with memorial access. The proof existed. Caroline stared at the screen as her own recorded voice said, "She is not family." No one spoke after the video ended. It is one thing to remember cruelty. It is another to hear yourself perform it. Caroline looked at me. "You knew this would happen." "No. David told you. He warned me. So you set me up. You made the list. You came expecting a fight." "I came with a coat and his watch." Her eyes moved to my purse. "You took that too?" "He gave it to me. That watch belonged to our household. It belonged to Dad. I was his wife." Yes. The answer did not give her what she wanted. Wife had become a word she used like a deed. Thomas continued. Under Dad's contingency clause, attempted interference with the trust did not remove Caroline's protected income. Dad had been careful. She would remain financially secure. But it activated independent administration. Before the trigger, Caroline could appoint one advisor to the marital trust and request additional discretionary distributions. After the trigger, all discretionary requests required approval from an independent trustee. She had not lost housing. She had not lost income. She had lost control. That was what she was truly fighting. Her attorney requested recess. This time, Thomas agreed. Caroline left the conference room with both lawyers. Evan remained. "She is going to blame me," he said. "For what?" "Not supporting the challenge. You are not responsible for her case. She will say Dad would still be alive if we had not stressed him." The sentence sounded rehearsed. "Has she said that before?" He nodded. "After arguments. After the foundation review. After you visited." I felt sick. Caroline had used Dad's heart condition as a leash. Every disagreement became danger. Every boundary became a threat to his health. No wonder Evan had learned obedience. "Your father's illness was not your responsibility," Maria said. Evan looked at her. "Did he talk about me at work?" "All the time. Good or bad. Both." Despite himself, he smiled. Maria continued. "He worried you believed you had to become him. He wanted you to study architecture if that is what you chose. Or music. Or nothing related to buildings. I changed my major twice. He changed his first bridge design 11 times. Evan looked surprised. "Dad?" He was afraid of failure too. He just hid it in revisions. That detail seemed to give Evan permission to breathe. Caroline returned after 20 minutes. Her attorneys proposed a settlement. She would not challenge the trust if I resigned as stewardship chair. Voting control would shift to the other trustees. Evan would receive a formal pathway to board membership within 2 years. The lake house would become shared family property. The foundation records would remain sealed. The funeral dispute would remain private. In exchange, Caroline would sign full releases. It sounded reasonable if you ignored what it meant. Remove Rachel. Prepare Evan. Share the house. Protect Caroline's reputation. The same family structure with better paperwork. Thomas looked at me. The decision was mine in part. I asked one question. "Why does the lake house need to be shared?" Caroline answered, "Because David's family spent decades there. Who wants access?" "Everyone." "Name them." She looked irritated. "Evan, me, Judith, the cousins." Aunt Judith shook her head. "I have my own cabin." Evan said, "I do not want ownership." Caroline looked at him. "You will later." There it was again. His future spoken over his present. I turned toward Caroline. "You want the lake house because Dad gave it to me. That is childish. Then why not request access instead of title?" She stopped. "Because access could be granted." Title meant equality. Title erased Dad's choice. "I will not make it shared property," I said. Her face hardened. "You want to keep me out." "Not automatically. You changed the locks." "Dad changed them." "You refused me last night." Because he specifically said not to let you enter before the records were secured. I lived there too. You visited. It was our family home. It was Dad's separate property. Her attorney touched her arm. She pulled away. I continued. After the estate is settled, Evan can visit whenever he wants. Aunt Judith can visit. I will consider requests from others. You will not have a permanent key. Caroline stared. You are punishing me. I am controlling access to my property. Your father has not been buried 24 hours, and you already sound like an owner. I thought of the chapel door. You sounded like an owner before he was buried. The room became silent. Her attorney requested another break. Caroline refused. She changed direction. If Rachel keeps the company roll, the foundation records should become part of formal discovery. Thomas looked at her. You signed an agreement acknowledging them. I signed under pressure. With independent counsel. My husband was dying. He was not terminal at the time. He was ill. Thomas remained calm. Do you wish to challenge the settlement and reopen the underlying transactions? Her attorneys both moved at once. One whispered. The other placed a hand over the document. Caroline finally understood the risk. To challenge Dad's plan, she would have to challenge the agreement that protected her. The foundation audit could become public. The organizations could face review. Her cousin could be investigated. The company board could seek repayment. Dad had not threatened her. He had created a choice. Security with accountability. Or control with exposure. She sat back. This family enjoys humiliating me. No, Evan said. Everyone looked at him. He continued. We spent years preventing you from feeling embarrassed. That is not the same as loving you. Caroline's face broke. You sound like her. No, I sound like Dad's letter. For the first time, she looked afraid of losing him emotionally, not financially. She turned toward me. What did David tell you to do with the records? Use them only if required to protect the trust or company. So you could bury me. No, he protected you. He documented me. Both are true. She cried quietly. Her attorneys stopped speaking. Then Caroline did something none of us expected. She asked everyone except Evan to leave the room. Thomas refused. This is an estate conference. Then let me speak to both children with counsel present but without the company. Maria and Paul agreed to step out. Aunt Judith left. Thomas and all attorneys remained. Caroline looked at Evan, then at me. I did take the money. No one responded. I told myself it was temporary. My mother's house was going into foreclosure. Leah could not finish school. The foundation had funds no one was using quickly enough. The funds were assigned to programs, I said. I know. Then why your consulting company? She closed her eyes. Because I had already moved money and needed invoices that made the transfers look organized. The admission was clearer than anything in Dad's files. Her attorney shifted. Caroline continued before he could stop her. David found out. He was furious. Not loud. Worse. Quiet. I knew that quiet. He asked how I could treat charitable money like family money, she said. I told him family came first. Evan looked down. Then he asked whether Rachel's housing families counted as family. I felt the sentence in my chest. Caroline looked at me. That is when I blamed you. You believed I reported it. At first. And after Dad told you I did not know? I still blamed you. Why? Because he respected your judgment. The answer surprised me. She continued. He began asking questions after meetings with you. Community benefit, transparency, conflicts. Every time he changed, I felt you entering our marriage. I was discussing projects. I know that now. Did you? No. The room remained quiet. Caroline looked at Evan. I wanted the company for you because I thought if your future was fixed, you would never leave. His eyes filled. You could have asked what I wanted. I was afraid of the answer. There it was. The fear beneath control. Not an excuse. an explanation. She looked toward me again. And I kept you outside because David's regret about you made me feel like the life we built was second. I was his daughter before he met you. I know. That was never a competition. It felt like one. She wiped her face. At the hospital, he asked for you. I said I would call, then he fell asleep. When he woke, he asked again. My body became still. Why didn't you call? Because he had spent the morning changing the trust. The room disappeared around me. Not literally. Emotionally. The chapel. The office. The documents. All of it narrowed to that hospital bed. He was dying, I said. I did not know it would be that night. You knew, he asked. Yes. You told the nurse I was out of state. Yes. Evan began crying. Caroline looked at him. I was angry. That is not enough, he said. No. She did not defend herself. That mattered, but it did not fix it. I cannot forgive that today, I said. I know. You cannot make it about pressure. I know. You cannot ask me to understand before you accept what it cost. I know. For the first time, her repeated words sounded less like strategy and more like surrender. Thomas ended the session for the day. The settlement remained unsigned, but the trust challenge stopped. Caroline's attorneys sent formal notice 3 days later that she would not contest Dad's estate or business trust. She signed the releases. She retained the main house, insurance, retirement assets, and marital income. She did not receive company voting power. She did not receive a lake house key. The foundation records remained sealed under the prior agreement, but an independent governance review was completed. The remaining balance was repaid through deductions from Caroline's discretionary trust. No public scandal. No dramatic arrest. No newspaper headline. Accountability without spectacle. Some people would say Dad protected her too much. Sometimes I agreed, but the foundation was made whole. Governance changed. Her access ended. And Dad refused to make humiliation the purpose. I accepted the stewardship chair role for 1 year. Not forever. 1 year. I told Maria and Paul the board needed a real succession process, not a daughter replacing a father because of blood. They agreed. We added 2 employee representatives, 1 community housing expert, 1 independent financial officer. My 2 votes became 1 after the transition. Dad had given me power. I used part of it to reduce the chance that one family could control everything again. Some board members resisted. They said the company needed decisive leadership. I said decisive leadership had created a blue room full of family evidence. That ended the argument. Evan did not join Bennett Engineering. He applied to an architecture program, then changed his mind and chose environmental design. Caroline hated the uncertainty. Evan stayed uncertain anyway. That was his victory. He moved into an apartment near campus. Not because Caroline threw him out, because he chose to leave. The first night, he called me. I feel guilty. For moving? For being relieved. Relief is information. That sounds like Dad. No, Dad would call it a structural indicator. Evan laughed. We became siblings without a parent translating between us. It was awkward, uneven, real. He told me when Caroline cried. I reminded him he could listen without changing his decision. I told him when company meetings exhausted me. He reminded me I could decline the trust role after a year. No one supervised the other. Aunt Judith organized a private memorial at the lake house 6 weeks after the funeral. No security guard. No seating list. No family category. We invited Dad's engineers, neighbors, old friends, company staff, and the nurse who had cared for him. Caroline was invited. That decision surprised everyone. I did not give her a key. I sent an invitation. Access by consent, not ownership. She arrived alone. She stood near the edge of the gathering and spoke to few people. When the memorial began, Aunt Judith said 3 sentences. Maria told a story about Dad approving a project after pretending for months to oppose it. Paul described the first bridge they designed together. Evan talked about Dad's terrible singing. Then I stood. At the chapel, Caroline had removed my remarks. At the lake house, I held no program. I spoke about Dad's systems, how he used plans to express care, how he documented what he should have said, how he protected people imperfectly, how he failed to call me when an apology would have been simpler than a trust. Then I looked at the old dock. My father believed good structures carry weight without making people feel the load. He was better at designing that in concrete than in family, but near the end he tried. I held up the old watch. He gave me this and said I understood time better than he did. I think he meant I understood that waiting also makes decisions. Caroline looked down. I continued. He waited too long to apologize. I waited too long to stop accepting other people's version of our relationship. We lost time. We also had time no one else saw. I told the truth. Not the clean version. Not the cruel version. The full version. Afterward, Dad's nurse approached. She handed me a folded note. He asked me to give this to you, if you ever came back here. The note was written on hospital paper. Rachel, if there is another memorial, say what you want. Do not let anyone edit grief into good manners. Dad. I laughed and cried at the same time. Caroline stood 10 feet away. She heard. She did not interrupt. That was new. Months passed. The main house became quiet. Caroline remained there, but changed it. She removed some company photographs, turned Dad's office into a sitting room, sold furniture he disliked. At first, those changes angered me. Then I remembered the house belonged to her. Boundaries work both directions. I did not own her space because Dad had lived there. She did not own mine because he had loved it. We communicated through email. Short, specific. No emotional emergencies. Evan refused to carry messages. Thomas handled trust questions. Once, Caroline asked to visit the lake house alone. I said no. She responded, I understand. 3 months later, she asked to attend with Evan for Dad's birthday. I said yes. She arrived at noon and left before sunset. She touched nothing without asking. Before leaving, she stood in the blue room doorway. The records had been transferred to secure storage. The room was empty except for Dad's desk. I hated this room, she said. You did not know it existed. I hated what I imagined he was keeping from me. That may be worse. She looked at the desk. Will you use it? No. What will you do with the room? I have not decided. She nodded. Then she said, I am sorry I locked you out. It was the first direct apology for the funeral. No explanation, no mention of stress, no if. I believe you are sorry, I said. She looked hopeful. I am not ready to forgive it. The hope faded, but she nodded. That is fair. A year after Dad's death, I completed my stewardship term. The company board asked me to remain. I agreed only as a regular member. Maria became chair. Bennett Engineering launched a housing infrastructure division combining engineering and community planning. The first project replaced failing water systems in a low-income neighborhood. Dad would have cared about the load calculations. I cared about the families. For once, those priorities occupied the same plan. The downtown building's employee trust began paying education grants. The foundation adopted public reporting. Every grant listed purpose, review, and conflicts. No family member could direct funds to relatives. Caroline did not participate. She began volunteering at a hospice instead. When Evan told me, I did not know whether to admire it or distrust it. Maybe both. People can change for mixed reasons. The work can still matter. 2 years after the funeral, Caroline invited me to lunch. Public restaurant. No attorneys. No keys. Evan knew, but did not attend. She placed a small box on the table. Inside was Dad's fountain pen. He used this to sign the first company contract, she said. I thought it was in his office. I kept it. Why give it to me now? Because I took something from the estate before the inventory. The old Caroline might have called it a memory. This Caroline named the action. You should return it through Thomas. I did. He documented it and authorized delivery. I looked at the pen. Thank you. She folded her hands. I used to think you wanted my place. I wanted access to Dad. I know. Do you? Yes. She looked out the window. I thought marriage meant I became the center of his family. Every time he turned toward you, I felt moved aside. You were his wife. You were his daughter. Both could exist. I did not believe that. We sat quietly. Then she said, I cannot change the hospital. No. Or the funeral. No. I want to stop defending them. That would help. She looked at me. Do you forgive me? The question came 2 years later. Not 2 minutes. That mattered. I forgive parts, I said. What parts? The funeral door. Her eyes filled. Not the hospital? Not yet. She nodded. No argument. Forgiveness had become specific, not a certificate. When I left, I took the pen. Not because it was valuable, because it belonged with the watch. 2 objects from a man who communicated through tools. The lake house remains mine. Evan has a key now. Aunt Judith does too. Caroline does not, but she has visited with permission. Some people call that unforgiving. I call it accurate. Trust does not require every door to return to its original lock. The blue room became a small library. I painted the walls a lighter color. Kept Dad's desk. Added shelves about housing, engineering, family systems, and grief. The window faces the lake. Sometimes I work there. Sometimes I sit without working. That may be the most important renovation. A room Dad built to document fear became a room where nothing needed to be proven. Every year, on the date of the private memorial, we gather at the lake. No formal speeches, no programs, no one checks a list. Last year, Caroline brought strawberries. A strange choice. She placed them on the table and asked, Are these all right? I said yes. Evan looked between us and wisely asked no questions. At sunset, we walked to the dock. Caroline stopped at the shore. Evan and I continued. That was not exclusion. She did not like the unstable boards. Small facts can exist without symbolism once a family stops turning everything into a test. People still ask what I felt when Dad's attorney handed me the keys. They expect satisfaction. A cinematic reversal. The stepmother closes one door. The daughter inherits the building. Justice. But keys are heavier than revenge stories make them seem. Each key opened a responsibility. A company I had not asked to lead. A house filled with grief. Records showing that Dad used me as cover. A relationship with a brother who had been protected into dependence. A stepmother whose wrongdoing did not erase the years she cared for my father. The keys did not prove I was loved more. They proved Dad trusted me to carry what remained. And trust, I had learned, can be another form of weight. I did not keep every key. The company access fob returned to Maria when my chair term ended. The storage key went to Thomas. The safe deposit box closed after the documents were moved. Dad's office became a shared boardroom. I kept 2. The lake house and the blue room. Not because I wanted control, because those were the doors I chose. My stepmother locked me out at Dad's funeral. Hours later, his attorney handed me the keys. But the real inheritance was not property. It was the right to stop letting other people define whether I belonged. Caroline could remove my name from a program. She could close a chapel door. She could tell guests I chose not to come. She could not erase the calls, the projects, the lake mornings, the hospital watch, or the apology Dad left in writing. Family is not decided by whoever stands nearest the entrance. Grief does not belong to the person holding the guest list. And love does not disappear because someone else controls the room. I missed my father's funeral service. For a long time, that sentence hurt more than anything. Now I understand I did not miss saying goodbye. I said goodbye at the grave, at the lake, in the company meeting, inside the blue room, in every building project that carried both his precision and my purpose. One locked door did not end our relationship. It exposed who believed they had the power to end it. And when the attorney placed the keys in my hand, I did not feel like I had won. I felt the lock turn.